Welcome to LSC. It's Sports Time. I'm your host, Bob HIntz. Today, I'm very fortunate to have a special guest in Danny Mitchell. Danny, football coach and baseball coach at Hampton High School, been there for a long time. I've known Danny for a long time. Welcome, Danny. I'm glad to have you here.
Thanks, Bob. It's nice to be here.
We're going to talk a little bit about your family, because you've got a family tradition that goes at Hampton High School, goes back many, many years. We're talking 60, 70 years. And we'll start with your grandfather.
Well, you know, you say it's tradition. It's either tradition or a curse, I guess. Because, but yeah, my grandfather, you know, I'm not sure of all the details. That was a long time ago. But somehow he hooked up with Coach Eason as his athletic trainer back in that day. And I know that there's stories of the kids coming, you know, over to the house I actually live in right now. You know, that's the one we remodeled. And, you know, he would tape their ankles before the games, and he would, you know, nurse their injuries. And, you know, we grew up with stories like that of, you know, Dick Carneal and Billy Wren and, you know, those kids coming. Well, you know, we're not kids anymore, but, you know, that's what we grew up around. That's the stories that my dad used to tell me.
Right. Now, for people who don't know, you're basically right across the street from what is now Hampton High School, but back then it was at Thorpe, so they had to drive over and come in there to get taped up and get ready for the ball games.
Right. I can remember telling, you know, my son Matthew that, you know, that my dad used to walk to school, so it was okay for him to walk to school. But the part Matthew didn't realize was Dad was walking a couple miles to school. And so when he finally realized that Hampton High School was where Darling Stadium was now, he said he didn't know whether he could do that or not.
Wow. All right, now we'll jump to your daddy. Now, your daddy played on a championship team.
Yeah, my dad played football at Hampton, I think 47 or 48, and they won a state championship in 48. And you know, he was probably an undersized center from what I understand. But, you know, they said he was a tough kid. And, you know, I can imagine growing up, you know, in our neighborhood, you know, that he was. And
right.
That's all the stories. But I know he also played at a time where people were coming back from the war. You know, so you would take some kids, an 18-year-old kid might be playing with a 23, 24-year-old kid.
Right.
But, you know, he thought the world of Coach Eason, and he thought the world of Hampton High School.
All right. Well, and people will get to see a little display here, the little football in the middle. That's what your dad got when he won the state championship in 48.
Yeah, my dad actually got that in 48, and he also had a letter sweater with state champions on it, and we cannot find that right now. We tried, but we can't find it.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit. You go to Hampton High School,
right,
and you win a state championship.
So, great, you know, and you don't realize how great those things are until, you know, you get to be our age. And,
right.
But you know, I played football there for 3 years, and you know, I probably played a whole lot more as a senior than I did in the state championship year. But it's something nobody could take away from you.
Right. Now, what position was you a lineman?
I was a center and a defensive guard.
Okay.
Played more defensive guard than I did.
So you're a little bit like you followed your daddy a little bit, or your dad who was a center.
Yeah.
So you played like your dad did then.
The Mitchells were blessed with slow feet, I guess. So we ended up in.
Well, and for our viewers, get to see that jacket behind you. That's your letter jacket that you got, but you didn't get rings back then.
No.
And it's like your dad got the little football on the chain. Right. You got the letter jacket. Probably was one of the very first letter jackets that was given out, I imagine.
Yeah, back in Hampton when I went to school, everybody had a letter sweater.
Right.
I mean, we wore our sweaters, and man,
yep.
Once you got a letter sweater, you were something. And so this was something else that they gave us, a state jacket. And as far as I know, Bob, that was the first state jacket that Hampton ever had. And, you know, we've evolved until, you know, 2005 jacket now.
Right. Well, the one behind me shows all the championships that were won at Hampton, which is kind of neat. Now, let's go one more step. Then your son comes along, and he gets to be on a championship football team. Just unbelievable. 3 championships in the same family. But talk a little bit about Matthew's success at Hampton.
Matthew had a great career at Hampton, you know, football and baseball. And, you know, the thing about Matthew is he loved Hampton. He loved the sports program there. He loved the academic. He had what a kid should have, a life at a high school. You know, was he the smartest kid? Probably not. You know, but he balanced them both well. You know, with me being on his back sometimes and everything, but he's a good athlete, and that's, I don't know, you know, what happened, but he ended up getting all the speed, all the feet. He just didn't get the size that the Mitchells had, you know, and he's following the same pattern that I did. He was probably undersized, you know, in high school, But first year of college, now he's like 6'1.5" and, you know, probably about 185, 90 pounds.
Yeah, because the other day when I was singing, I asked you how he was doing. He says, you can ask him. And I didn't even realize that was Matthew.
You know, it's a big kid. And, you know, the thing about Matthew, he was probably the smallest kid to ever play at Hampton when he was in the 9th grade. And I can remember Coach saying, Matthew, do you want to go down to JV or do you want to, you know, play wide out and hold for extra points? And Matthew said, I want to stay up here with you. And that's how he was. You know, he always took a challenge on.
Well, and if anybody watches Channel 48 and LSC and all our sports that we do, and they'll see some game with this little kid running around with the football helping during ball games, and it's Matthew. And you could see he was going to be an athlete then. He was catching the ball, throwing the ball, running. I mean, he was in seventh heaven during a ball game.
Matthew played a game within a game.
Yeah.
You know, I think him and the referees had a game going on while our game was going on, and you know, he was fun to be around. I don't think he pestered the kids too much. You know, a lot of those little kids will pester, but Matthew knew he had a job to do. And I remember when he first started doing it, I told Coach, I said, he's too young. And Mike said, no, he's not. And we went to a couple games, and the referee said, well, he's not going to run the ball. He's not going to run the balls for us. And Mike said, he is going to run the ball for us. Turned his hat around backwards, and Matthew ran the balls for us. So.
All right, now when you graduated, where did you end up going to college?
You know, I beat around the bush a little bit, but I ended up going to Concord College.
Okay. And what was that experience like? Because it's much different, and athletes have got to be better once you get to the college level.
Well, you know, it was, but it was so, you know, I can remember our homecoming game, you know, and we said we were going to have a bonfire, and I said, all right, man, you know, we're going to have a bonfire, and that made up for the fact that I'm not wearing as good a pads as I wore when I was at Hampton.
Right.
My helmet's not as good. And so we went to the bonfire, and I'm telling you, it was like 3 little boards, you know, and I'm used to Hampton, Newport News type bonfires, you know, where they give us 2 days off to go get wood. And so it was a good experience. I needed to be away from home.
Right.
But man, I never got over being homesick. I was one that never got over being homesick. Right? And, you know, to this day, I'm living, 20 yards from where I grew up at my grandmother's house. But,
wow. Now, did you always want to be a coach? I mean, was this something that you thought about even when you were playing, or?
You know, I always thought that that's what I was going to end up being. You know, people say, well, I can remember sometimes and, you know, being in a class and the guy said, well, you better pass this class or you won't do this or you won't do that. And they were right, but it was always some way that I was going to end up coming back, you know, and coaching. And it was just, it's a love that I think my dad, you know, gave to me.
Right. What was your responsibilities basically? When you first started, were they the same as they are now, or has they evolved?
Just about, you know, when we first started coaching over Hampton, you kept your mouth shut and you learned. And I think that's the difference between young coaches now and young coaches back when I started.
Right.
You know, I didn't know everything. I didn't have a lot of answers, but I can also remember, you know, the first day of practice out there with Coach, and he hasn't told me one thing. He just said, we're going to start practice at such and such a time, and you're the line coach, right? And so I'm sitting over there sick as a dog. Tell me what to do. And so he blows the whistle, and we get ready to go. And I said, well, Coach, you know, what do you want me to do? And he says, I want you to coach him. And so, you know, that's what I've always tried to do.
Right.
You know, I've tried to do the best job I could for the program and for the kid.
Well, you not only got to play for Mike Smith, then you get to coach with him. That's got to be a difference from a player to almost not an equal, but on the same level with him.
All right. Well, I don't think it's anywhere near being equal, but you know, it was back when Mike was an assistant coach. You know, he'll tell you things were a whole lot tougher than they are nowadays.
Right.
I mean, even when I'm coaching now, you know, I get kids come back and, you know, and I had 2 or 3 over Christmas and said, well, you know, it's not the same. Y'all are not as tough as you used to be. And I think that's the truth. I mean, when he was an assistant coach, and he'll tell you to your face that we started off with 40 sprints and 20 crabs, 40-yard sprints and 40-yard crabs, and that's how we started summer football.
Right.
And now, you know, we might start off with 10 or 15 sprints, you know, but the kids nowadays, they work harder in the summer, harder in the off season, where, you know, we actually worked harder, I think, back, you know, during practice.
During the practice.
At least we like to think that we did, you know.
Yeah.
You know
well, when I was in high school, the first few days of practice, so I couldn't hardly move because that was the hardest I worked out. Yeah. Didn't work out during the summer. You know, you just didn't do that.
Yeah, senior year, there was a universal gym up in the, you know, up in a little room above the gym, and that was our weight room, and you might go up there and push that 3 or 4 times, you know, and then walk around and, you know, like you'd done something. Even when we went to college, weights were just coming in, you know, in the early mid-'70s. That's when they started that.
Right. Now, when you're coaching, and I know you do a lot of the breakdown of the films, because I used to go and sit with you during the day, and you'd have the red and the different colors, schemes and everything, and the tendencies. And take me through that, because we're not talking you watching the film one time.
No.
And we're not talking one day doing this, getting ready for your game plan. Take me through a little bit of what you're looking at when you're watching a film.
Well, you know, it's gotten a whole lot better than when we first started, because what was it, 8mm? We used to, you know, it was click the thing, run it back, click the thing, and now I can remember when they first gave us a DVD or a VCR tape, and we thought they were trying to screw us over instead of giving us the 8mm. But yeah, that starts, you know, everybody says, well, you know, how, you know, why don't you enjoy the win? You don't have time to enjoy the win when you're coaching.
Right.
You know, I actually coach scared, I think because I want to be successful, you know, and so I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we're successful. But as far as the breakdown goes, you just start, I'm in charge of like breaking down the other team's offense.
Okay.
And so we start off and we watch the film, and every film that we watch, you know, I'll write the play down, you know, yards, distance, put it in our terminology.
Right.
You know, if it's a pass, if it's a run. And so we write it on a little steno notepad that my wife religiously gets for me every year that we start off. It's 2 steno notepads and 3 of these little yellow tablets, right? And so we'll write it down. And then you go back over that, and then you get your manila folders, and you break down formations and the plays that they ran in those formations. And then you transfer the manila folders to a big white board.
Right.
Like you used to do projects on.
Right.
And you color code it red, you know, we just picked out 3 colors, red pass, greens run to the left, and blues to the right. Yeah. You know, that's how we break down their offense. And, you know, you look at that stuff enough, and, you know, you get all the formations, and we're doing the same thing the computers are doing nowadays. I'm just not smart enough to do it with the computer and do it in 2 hours instead of
8 hours.
8 hours.
Yeah.
You know, and but I think, you know, going back to the old school, if I write it down, I remember it. I let the computer do it.
And I'm like you. If I write something down, I'm going to remember it. I can understand that.
Hey, I tell you who gets on me all the time is Alvis. Well, why don't you do this? This is high tech. This is da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, I said, Alvis, if I write it down, I can remember it. And then I can go and, you know, try to teach the kids about it.
Right. Well, Matthew wasn't the only athlete you had in your family.
No.
You had a daughter that ran cross country.
I had a daughter that was a good athlete. You know, she gymnastics. She was gymnastics when she was young, and she ran track, and she actually left Hampton High School with 12 letters, which is, you know, that's pretty good. I don't care what you're lettering in. That's pretty good. And she was also, you know, all-state choir, and she's got a beautiful family now. 2 grandkids, and, you know, they're the light of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and got a good husband, and but it's true about the grandkids. You know, I said when she first had one, I said, well, she won't, you know, I'll love her, but she's not going to run my life. Well,
Bull.
she's running my life. And you don't understand that until you have the grandchild.
That's right.
You know, so.
Now, what was it like coaching Matthew? Now, I know you didn't coach him specifically in football, because you had the line and he played in the backfield and held for the kickers and everything. But you did coach him in baseball, which he is now playing.
Right, exactly. Football, I can remember Mike said, I'm his coach, you know, just
back away
leave him
from
alone, you know.
Yeah.
So I coached the line, and, you know, the great thing about it was we went to practice every day together, and we came home every day together. And it's just years that you cannot get back like that, you know. And baseball-wise, you know, I tried to leave it, you know, I tried to do what Mike said, you know, you love him, and all the kids know that he's your favorite, but you can't let the other kid know that, you know, that he's your favorite kid. And so Matthew probably caught more grief from me than any other kid on baseball or football team, to be honest with you. I would let other kids get away with stuff that I wouldn't let Matthew get away with. And we tried to leave it all at the school. You know, football, we really did. The first 3 years, you know, the first year, you know, he was just more or less held and was a receiver. But the second and his third year, he was a pretty good little receiver.
Right.
And he was a good kicker. And then that 4th year, he was the quarterback. And, you know, as quarterback, the only thing I ever told him, I said, you don't have to win the game. You know, all you have to do is run the football game. I always believed that as a quarterback, but Mike ran it. Now, baseball-wise, we've had a couple heated arguments. What's it take, a minute and a half to get home? But we've had some knockouts, but when we got home, that was it.
Okay.
You know, never, And it was probably, I was probably blowing something up. You know, you can ask Matthew now. He says, well, you know, why does your dad yell at you like that? You know, other kids. And he says, because my dad loves me, which is a story that goes back to my dad.
Right.
I can remember going in the house crying and saying, Mom, you know, Mom, why is Dad on my behind all the time? You know, we can be out throwing a football, or we can be out playing baseball. And it's never, you know, I won't say, you know how it is. As a kid, it always seems like all you're getting is a negative. And I can remember my dad saying, I love you. I don't love the other kid over here. He can mess around all he wants, but I want you to do the best you can do. And so when you ask Matthew something, I think it was in the paper somewhere along the line that, you know, when my dad yells, he knows that I know that he loves me. So I don't know.
Well, let's stick with baseball for just a minute, because there was no baseball field over at Hampton, and you had to play all your games at Post 31 field. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, before I took it, yeah.
Right. But once you took it over, you basically were responsible for building a baseball diamond at Hampton High School.
Yeah, well, we did. Trish Mitchell, you know, asked if I'd be the baseball coach, and I said, yeah. And she says, well, you know, you're going to do this at Post 31 and da-da-da-da. And I said, well, you know, that's not right. If you're going to play baseball, and are we going to practice at Post 31 every day? Oh, no, we can't get a bus and go back and forth every day. I said, well, then we need to play where we're practicing. And so we had some heated conversation, not so much Trish and I, but, you know, administration didn't want to do this, didn't want to do that. And so one Saturday, I know that where the baseball field is now, the woods actually came to the mound.
Right.
Brush and stuff, you know,
right.
and, you know, trees. And so we got in there with the bulldozer and bulldozed it all away. And
now, you say you got people that come in and help.
I had a couple friends that owned some big equipment. And so when we came back, we pushed it all away. And I can remember them saying, well, you know, you can't do that. And I said, well, I didn't know that, you know. So
well, it's better to ask forgiveness rather than permission.
I pleaded ignorant, but I was probably ignorant for doing it. But so that's how I got started. And, you know, one thing led to another, and we went out and everything at Hampton High School. That's one thing I'm proud about. You know, you don't get a lot of money for baseball, and they told us that when they took it. I mean, Mr. Thomas and them were straight up. But, you know, all those kids that played for us, they've got a beautiful field to play on. You know, they've got a nice fence around there. We got a beautiful scoreboard, beautiful facilities, and it's not because of me so much as it is the kids. You know, they want to keep it where it is right now.
Well, I know when we were doing baseball games, and you say, when are you going to do a ball game over here? Because it seemed like every year, the way it had it set up, that we always filmed your game when you played somebody else. So the first time we was over, I know you were excited to welcome us over there to the new field at Hampton High School.
Right. It's and actually it's going under renovation right now. Nothing had been done on that field for, I know, since '85, I guess. And we wanted some new dugouts, and so Mr. Wilson downtown, you know, had told us, you know, we get new dugouts, so we're all excited about it. And when they started grading for the dugouts, they found out the grade was so bad on the field. It looked nice,
right?
You know, because we covered it up with a lot of pretty grass and stuff, but they couldn't build the dugouts till they regraded the field. So we got the infield and everything's regraded, and we're waiting for new dugouts right now.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the players that you can remember from baseball that were just, you enjoyed coaching. They went on, whether they ended up playing ball later on or not, but some of those that really stick out in your mind. And I know you're not going to remember them all, and we're just going to kind of say, forgive us if we forget somebody. But there's some that I know that sticks in your mind.
Well, you know, it's a couple. You know, I think you remember the first team that you coached, you know, and had good success with.
Absolutely.
And that was with Aaron Mundy and Brian Gerzak, Robert Nicosia, who actually changed his name to Robert Morgan. But you know, that was the first team to go to the regional championships and go into the state playoffs. I think y'all did the state playoffs from the old War Memorial Stadium.
It sure did.
But you know, Mundy was a tight end for UVA. Gerzak was a linebacker, and Nicosia Morgan, he ended up being the captain of ODU's baseball team. And a good group of kids, you know, kids that worked hard. But back in those days, what people don't realize was Mundy and Gerzak and Nicosia, they all played football. Mundy, Gerzak, and them, they played basketball, and then they go play baseball. But, you know, that was before you had to just concentrate on one sport.
Right.
I mean, that was back, I think, when high school was really, really good, you know.
Yeah, because when I was growing up, there was nothing as a three-sport athlete.
Right.
That was a common thing.
Right.
And sometimes you get a four-sport athlete, which was a little unusual. But, you know, that's kind of do your heart good to remember, especially that first team.
Well, you know, it's sort of off the mark, but you know, we're not a big high school now. We've got 1,400 kids going. I mean, maybe 15, and half of those are girls, and half of that the kids that don't want to play. And here we are now. We're trying to say, well, you know, you can't play this because you're doing this or you're doing that. And I just thought it was always a crime to tell a kid, you know, you should be this. At 16 or 17, 14, 15 years old, you know, going to do this. And, you know, maybe that was my fault with Matthew, but with Matthew, I said, play everything you want to play. You know, if you want to play basketball, play basketball. And when Matthew went to college, you know, he wanted to do both. And so he turned down some good, well, some big D1 schools to play both. And then after a year, he found out he wanted to play one. And so at least he made that decision.
Right.
An adult didn't make that decision for him.
Right, and that's good. What about the football? There's got to be some guys that you remember in football other than Gersak and Monday.
Well, you know,
let's talk about the ones you coached, the ones on the line.
Right. Well, I can remember, and the reason I'm going to tell you this is because he stopped by at Christmas, a kid named Tony Tucker. And it was probably the first year that 1980 or 81, and Tony had actually started on JV team. I coached JV in '78. And then I went back, and I didn't tell Mike Bowley that I wasn't going to coach JV again. But I asked and begged, please don't make me coach that anymore. And so those kids, Franco Harris, Tucker, all those kids came up with us on the varsity. And I can remember we were playing Petersburg, who had a heck of a football team. And it was like 7-0. And we were coming out of our own end zone. And I look up, and Tucker raises his hand, probably, and says, Coach, I got to come out. I said, stay in there. You're all right. And then he takes his hand away, and his nose is just completely broken. I mean, it's bloody as it can be, right? Get him out, get him back in there, going down. He intercepts a pass, and he gets it out to about the 40-yard. We win the game 14-0. But he comes by this Christmas. He usually shows up every 2 or 3 years, but he's got his kids with him and his wife. And he says, I just want to, want y'all to meet Coach. And I think that's the greatest thing in the world. I mean, I can remember talking to doctors, and they want to be, doctor this or doctor that or this, and I just think the word coach, if somebody looks at you and says, hey, Coach HIntz, like your basketball players, that means a lot. You've touched that kid somewhere along the way. Hopefully it's good. Maybe it's bad. Maybe he's learned that he didn't want to be like you, but somewhere, you've influenced his life somewhere along the way.
Right. Well, that's a great story to have him come back like that and bring his family, which is that really touched you.
I said, man, you're trying to make me feel old, because when I walk through the school, and I still sometimes on good days I still feel, like it's 1980. I'm walking around with the long black hair and the Fu Manchu, and then I look in the showcase and I see this old guy, walking down the hallway. Who the heck is that? And then I realized, it's me. So, thing about, the truth about that was, and you coached and you taught long enough that you teach that age group of kid, 15, 18. You feel, 15, 18. You don't feel like you're ever getting any older.
That's right. You do. It makes you feel. Right. And that's people say, well, why do you hang around young people? It's because it makes you feel young. Right. Well, yes, it does. Yeah. If you coach and you got to have, you probably cannot wait for football to start in the fall.
Right. I went to the baseball game, yesterday, and now I'm gung ho for baseball. And if we didn't, if we worked a regular job, we would have excuses why our golf ball's not going 50 yards farther like it used to. And now it's the equipment. It's not us because we're not getting any older, right?
That's right.
A guy that doesn't teach or doesn't teach the same age group of kids, he probably can feel himself get a little older.
For those people who are not sure, when you talked that you was at a baseball game, and we're talking in January, you went up and watched Matthew play.
Yeah, they had a scrimmage game Saturday and Sunday, and somebody said, well, why are you up here? I said, because, that's what daddies do.
Yep, daddy's going to see the son play.
You only get one chance, so I'm trying to, try to do it right.
Oh, man. Tell me a little bit, what was it like with Coach Smith? And I'm sure your relationship with him evolved over the years. Right. But what was that like? And it still is like, and you're still doing it.
He's like, we won't say father because that makes us, sound old. You never want to compare anybody to your father, but as a role model, he's my biggest role model. My dad's passed away, and people, think Mike Gruff, he's gruff and he does this, and probably, I was probably intimidated and the only man I know that can still intimidate me if he wants to, probably. That's bad to be 57 years old and can still be intimidated by a man. But, you know, would do anything in the world for you. You know, he's done so much for me and Cindy and my family, my mom, you know, my dad when he was alive, and there's just no way I'll ever be able to repay him back. You know, if it's sort of like that mouse and lion type deal. But he would give, you know, if he likes you or if you're doing right, and he'd give you shirt off his back. And that's what people don't understand about Mike. You know, they see the gruff, you know, tobacco spit, and that's what he wants you to see. You know, I mean, that's what he wants you to see. But
that's the persona he wants to project, but that's not
just
that's
the
not
nicest guy in the world. But I've learned so much football from him, you know. But I've also learned about life and how to treat your family. You know, how to treat your son, how to coach your son, how to interact with your other son that doesn't want to do anything, you know, with sports. I mean, I had one son, you know, that suffers from Asperger's, and man, we, you know, took a long time to get a grip on that, and probably, you know, Coach gave me more advice on that than anything. That? You know, him and Lisa are just special people.
Yeah. All right. Well, finally, we're going to wrap this thing up. But how would you put in perspective? And this is going to be hard to do, but your whole time and your Hampton High School being in your life for so long and your family's life.
Gracious, you know, I just don't know whether you can or not. I mean, it's what we do. You know, somebody asked, I think this year, you know, football game, what would I do on a Friday night, you know, if I wasn't coaching football? Now, I don't want to go just stand around and get down on the sidelines. You know, I want to work that part, you know, for that week and be ready to go. But what would we do if we didn't have a football game to go to? You know, what would we do if we didn't have a baseball game to go to and juggle this or juggle that? Like, I know Matthew's coming in town on March the 7th. Well, we've got a game on March the 7th, you know, and how are we going to juggle that around and stuff? But it's been a great life, and you never would have been. I don't think I would have had it if it hadn't been for Cindy. You know, Cindy's is the breadwinner. She's the rock of the family, and you know, make sure this is that. And I've played all my life, and you know, what greater thing can you do than, you know, to be in high school for that all your life? You know,
to do what you love doing.
That's right. And you know, and that's the thing about it is, I just think that's probably over the years. That's a lot of people have left. You know, that just love the school, like you probably used to love Bethel or something. But I mean, you know, I know Mike and Alvis and Danny love Hampton High School, and you know, I don't think Coach is ever going to leave. And after last year, I thought would be my last year. I mean, I went in all intent and purposes to playing golf in the fall, and you know, and somebody will say, well, you're not going to do it. And I said, this is it. You know, this is going to be the last one. And about halfway through, I felt so good, you know. It was a good thing about being in retirement. You know, you get in better shape. Yep. You know, you're walking every day, you're lifting a little bit, playing a little bit of golf, you know, go to practice. So it was probably a blessing that, you know, I retired, but I want, you know, I know I got one more year in me, you know, like Brett Favre. So I'm not going to wait till, you know, August to say it, but.
Okay, well, I'm glad.
But that'll be good.
Well, listen, appreciate it. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I want to thank my special guest, Danny Mitchell, for coming over here and sharing some of these stories with them. You're watching LSC. This is Sports Time. This is Bob HIntz. Till next time.